Welcome to Preparing for your M3 Huddle. M3 Huddle dates are quickly approaching, and this will be a valuable opportunity for you and your team to step back, connect, and reflect on your program. Over the next few minutes, we'll walk through what you need to know and how to prepare so you can make the most of your M3 Huddle day. If you've never attended or prepared for an M3 before, don't worry. This overview will guide you through everything you need to get started. If you haven't registered yet for your team to participate in the huddle, please be sure to reach out for more information on upcoming dates. You can also check Ignite After School's M3 page for any open huddles that are available. If there are specific portions of the preparation that you need to focus on, you can also use the jump to links or the anchor links that are in the video description. You can find what we're going to talk about today and more support materials at our Engage St. Paul website, where we have all our Sprocket CPI resources available. If you're in the preparing for the huddle phase, you've likely already registered your team for your selected huddle date, including the number of team members you anticipate attending. If your group size has increased or decreased by 2 or more people, please let me know so we can plan accordingly. And just a quick reminder, it is best to have at least 2 people attend. While programs have participated with just 1 person in the past, they've almost always wished they had a teammate to collaborate with and to talk through their data. If you have a larger team, like 6 or more, that's great. Just make sure everyone has access to the materials and data you'll be using, whether that's printed copies or digital access. As you and your team prepare for the upcoming M3 huddle, here are a few important details to help everyone have a productive day. Mark your calendars. If you are registered as the quality lead for your activator cycle, you should already received or will soon receive a calendar invite or email with all the information you need to prepare. Please be sure to forward the calendar invite to any colleagues who will be attending. Even if not everyone uses online calendars, having them included helps us verify attendance and ensures they have the details. Encourage your team to plan their morning. Be sure to schedule extra time for parking and settling in, especially if your huddle is held at a busy or unfamiliar location. We want to start on time, and arriving a few minutes early will help everyone have time to settle in and feel ready. Now let's talk nourishment. We'll provide a light breakfast, really morning refreshments, typically tea and hot water mixes. Coffee is available only depending on the location and the setup and if we have the availability for it. So if coffee is a must-have for you, please bring your own. And just in case we have some, you can certainly top off yours. If you're attending a full day huddle, lunch will be provided, and we aim to offer vegetarian option and avoid pork. If you have specific dietary needs like gluten-free or vegan, you may want to also bring some backup options, as though accommodations can be more challenging depending on the caterer. We do our best to have something for everyone. And also think about dressing comfortably. The huddle is like a working retreat, so being comfortable in casual attire is encouraged. And here's a hot tip. If your staff plan to use laptops to look at your data, consider bringing extension cords or power strips because outlets may be limited or not readily available. If you have folks on your staff team who are new to M3 Huddle, we strongly encourage them to watch the Ignite M3 Huddle intro video ahead of time. This video lays the groundwork for how we approach data with care and structure during the day to support those who are attending. In the past, we spend a good portion of the morning unpacking these concepts during the huddle itself. By watching in advance, we can hit the ground running and save time to avoid repetition for returning staff. So we will still touch on these key ideas just to set the grounding for the day, but only briefly, kind of as a refresher, but not as a main learning focus. And also, while online huddles are rare, we do still occasionally do them, but if your team is participating in one, there's going to be an additional video to help staff to make sure they can access and become familiar with the platform we'll be using, which will help keep the experience engaging and collaborative. We'll send this video in advance if you will be doing an online huddle so that everyone can be prepared. This document may look familiar, and if you're leading a team, it's especially helpful to review and reflect on it before your huddle day. You'll have about 5 minutes early in the session to walk your team through this tool so everyone starts with a shared understanding of what data you're going to look at. The document outlines the 4 areas of data we'll be exploring throughout the day. It's meant to help you organize your thoughts around the data you're bringing and identify which piece fits in each of those different areas. Don't have a data for the specific area? That's okay. We'll provide discussion prompts that you and your team can use to reflect on what you think, know, and maybe you're curious about, even without the hard data in hand. Here's a few things to keep in mind, though. You don't need data in every quadrant. Not all programs have all areas fully represented. So, again, come with what you have and we'll make the day useful for you. Try to use data from the same program and group of young people. So, for example, if you're bringing quality data from this year, but experience data from last year, this creates two different narratives, which makes reflection like less cohesive. So, it's helpful to have data sets from the same group of young people. This resource is a tool, it's not a test. And so use it to help identify what you have and what you might need and where you might want to support during the huddle. And the goal is really reflection, not perfection. We're here to learn from what we do have and not stress out about what's missing. Before we wrap up this section, I want to note that we are about to walk through each of the 4 data areas, highlighting what to prepare and what to consider if you're missing data in an area. Feel free to check the video description, as I mentioned, for those links to jump to specific sections you might want to review. And as always, visit the Sprocket CPI resources page, which includes some of the resources that will be mentioned. So starting with the attendance and participation data, it's helpful to identify what insights would be most helpful for your program. And you might have thought about this in the plan stage for your cycle, but here are a few reminders of things to consider. Your goals. What are your current participation goals? And this could be around specific demographics, including those listed like the zip code, age, grade, race, ethnicity, maybe about the frequency of how often young people or how long, the duration that they participate. You may have goals you've committed to funders or goals you may define by your mission. If your demographic goals are to reflect your program community, for example, you might want to check Minnesota Compass. It's a project of Wilder Research which compiles data from reliable sources that provide all types of community level demographics and information. You can select county, neighborhood, or even draw your own boundaries. Frequency and duration goals are not just about who is registered, but the attendance that shows how often they show up and for how long over time that they participate. You also want to think about the program scope. So if you run one program at one site, this part's easy. It gets a bit trickier for organizations that may run the same program at multiple sites, or will run the data by individual programs, sites, or aggregate across multiple sites. These are all things to think about. Also, your organization may run multiple different programs, and in that case, it is recommended to run each program separately as the context for the ages or the type of programming, and those other areas of data that tell the full picture that come into play. When thinking about the time frame, thinking about what data range will you use, and do you want to have a comparison from this time frame, the same period last year? Oftentimes, it'll be representing the beginning of your program time frame to when you run the report so that you can see the most current and recent attendance. But that is something that you want to think about, which makes sense for your program. And then the attendance breakdown. Will you utilize participation by number of days attended? What breakdown makes sense given your program structure and where you are at the point of your program year? The other consideration is how will you share the data with staff? Many programs will run the report for the type of data they're looking for. If you're utilizing the Sprocket's shared data system, you can check out the folders in the Sprocket CPI resource page for instructions on how to run those reports. There's also a short video that walks through it as well in the training videos document at the top of that page. Some programs may have access that staff can look directly at their data on their laptop. That can work too, depending on the comfort level staff have with navigating those systems. There's a lot of different ways to think about this area of data, and identifying what is most relevant to you is important, and that's what you should bring. The next area of data is quality practices. Now, just a reminder, this is what is happening at the point of service. Some of the things to consider with this is what were your goals? Maybe you were doing a full PQA observations, or maybe you were looking at specific scales or items that you've been talking about or focusing on recently. Again, thinking about program scope. Are you going to run your programs by the individual observations, or you can also run aggregate reports with multiple observations or even across multiple sites? Time frame, again, you're ideally looking at observations from the past few months. And if you don't have a recent observation that's internal, hopefully you've gotten your Sprockets external observation. But if you didn't have an opportunity to do your internal observation, I would recommend that team PQA reflection for scoring. So that's an opportunity to bring your team together, identify if you want to do the full PQA or maybe there's specific scales, and have the conversation. What is their examples or evidence of what is happening in programming? And then your lead can put that information into Scores Reporter and run a report with that information and use that as a reflection of their perception of that quality and what the examples are that they're doing in programming. If your team doesn't use the PQA, maybe you haven't started with that yet, but you still want to be thinking about your quality practices, there's another great resource that comes out of Ignite. It's the Believe It, Build It Effective Practices Self-Assessment. This has 6 building blocks, and some of them are relevant to the direct service components, but there's also some great reflective questions around program design and other elements that do impact the quality of your program. And so that might be something you can do ahead of time and bring and use that to reflect on, or we will also have these available at the huddle if you need to use that one for that conversation at that point. The next 2 areas we're going to kind of talk about together. That's program experiences, how young people are experiencing the program, and youth outcomes, how young people are impacted by your program. Now, for many programs, they may do surveys to get the program experience data from the young person's voice. Sometimes those surveys also provide outcome data if it is around questions about how they were impacted. And youth outcomes might also be by observation. So this is so unique to each program, and the youth outcomes especially can be a harder one for programs to measure. So first off, if you don't have these, don't worry. Again, we will have some opportunities for you to have great discussions that will be meaningful. And the other thing you could consider is thinking about your results from last year. So again, we know that's not your current participants' results, but you can use that as a way to reflect on what it was in the past and what your perceptions are now. You might be able to bring old surveys or materials that you can use to discuss and think about how it relates to your current participants. And also, if you have logic models or program goals around experience or outcomes, those materials will also help you in having your conversation and as you're thinking about the next year and what questions you might have or what you want to know. And so that's important to think about. If you have these pieces of data, that is great. Again, if you've done a survey that includes both of these, you're going to want to identify how you will separate those for conversation. But again, bring enough reports so that everyone has access to look at the data. If there are charts or other graphs that need to be in color, make sure that you have them printed in color or available in an online format that staff can look at. Finally, this you don't need to prepare for, but I just want to remind you that the goal of the huddle is to really reflect and celebrate what's going well and identify areas that are important to your team and elevate what things that you want to work on moving forward as a team. And from that, you will create your commitment to action. Now, this won't be completed at the huddle, but the hope is that you'll have your key areas identified and have a real good start moving forward to create that action plan. And really, it is about the continuous program improvement and finding ways to be responsive to your young people and what they're experiencing in your program. So it's time to prepare for the huddle. If you have any questions, please reach out. And again, go to the engagestpaul.org Sprocket CPI resources page to access the documents and more information.